Uncover 5 spine-chilling midnight shift horror stories that will haunt your dreams forever. Claire had just finished another exhausting 12-hour shift at the local hospital in Maplewood. The morning sun was creeping up, painting the sky with soft pastels. She couldn't wait to get home, to bury herself in the warmth of her husband's embrace and snuggle with her toddler daughter. But as she stepped outside, the air felt thick, heavy with an unsettling stillness. The sort of quiet that made goosebumps rise on her arms, as if something was lurking in the shadows, waiting. Shadows danced like predators, blending with her rising anxiety. As she climbed into her car, the weight of the night clung to her. The engine sputtered to life, but tension knotted in her stomach. The drive home twisted into a desolate stretch of road far too soon. As if conjured by her fears, the car coughed and wheezed before it coughed, its last lights flickering out, leaving her alone in the dark, her heartbeat echoing louder than ever. Panic spiked as she fished for her phone, only to be greeted by a glaring message: no signal. The isolation wrapped around her like an icy grip. Steeling her resolve, Claire opened the door, a heavy sigh escaping her lips. She felt that terrible awareness, the sensation of being watched. Then a sliver of light sliced through the darkness, distant headlights. Relief surged momentarily as a police cruiser rolled up, its engine purring like a cat ready to pounce. She recognized the officer, but familiarity can breed discomfort. The glint in his eyes felt off. It was predatory, unsettling. "Need a hand?" he asked, but his tone dripped with something she couldn't put her finger on. As they waited, shadows flitted in her peripheral vision. Whispers floated through the still air, long-buried community secrets creeping closer. The hands of her watch ticked mockingly, and terror pooled in her chest as she recalled the bizarre disappearances she'd dismissed as urban legends. The authority she thought was there to protect her now felt like a hunter closing in on its prey. "What's wrong?" She forced her voice to stay steady, her breaths quickening. Glancing at the officer revealed a slight smirk playing on his lips, one that unnerved her more than it should have. It wasn't just her imagination. Figures flickered behind the edges of her vision, faces of neighbors she'd known for years. Familiarity morphed into dread as recognition clawed at her senses. The heart of this sleepy suburban town pulsed with something grotesque, a darkness lurking beneath manicured lawns and cheerful mailboxes. Just as her stomach tightened, the officer's radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. The shift in his posture sent shivers down her spine. Should she wait for help? Or make a break for it? Before she could make her choice, footsteps appeared on the gravel, accompanied by the soft rustle of forgotten tales. Time elongated as terror coiled tighter in her gut. She turned back to the officer, his jaw set, his eyes devoid of warmth. Something in her gut whispered to run, and just as revelation dawned, the air grew thick, clenching around her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Footsteps grew louder, intensifying her panic. The officer's face morphed into a sinister mask, unraveling her sense of safety right before her eyes. Figures slinked closer, shadows sharpening into recognizable features in the night. What had she stepped into? A trap laid by those she should trust? The darkness enveloped her, a predator ready to claim another victim. Fear rooted her in place, but she knew she had to escape. What revelation would unfold next? Would she be the next echo in the haunting lore of Maplewood? Her heart raced, pounding in her ears as she squinted through the darkness. The figures surrounding her were unsettling, past versions of innocent faces she thought she knew. Neighbors? Friends? Now they stood as harbingers of something sinister. They moved in closer, their eyes glinting like sharp knives under the faint street light, hunger evident in their predatory gazes. "Claire, is it?" one whispered, a voice like silk coated in venom. She couldn't place him, but the familiarity sent icy dread coursing through her veins. Such a long night, maybe it's time to go home. We've missed you. The officer remained silent, just watching, a horizontal smirk stretching unnaturally across his face. She felt a wave of nausea hit her. He should have been her savior, but he stood there, a monument to her encroaching doom. The comforting glow of the cruiser lights started to feel like a trick, an illusion made to ensnare her deeper into the web woven by her community. Go away, Claire stammered, feeling the fight-or-flight instinct surge. Panic ignited her blood, and with a violent jolt she pushed the door open farther. Gravel crunched underfoot as she stumbled out, her gaze darting between the faces, the officer, and the treacherous route behind her. Which way to run? Back into the darkness, or toward the one she thought could protect her? The figures began to chant softly, a chorus of eerie familiarity wrapping around her like a fog. Join us, join us. The words reverberated in her mind, echoes of nights spent caring for the sick and dying, unaware of the darkness looming beyond the hospital walls. She stumbled backward, her breath coming in sharp gasps. I want tea! Leave me alone! Desperation clawed at her throat, and she turned, ready to flee into the dense blackness of the surrounding woods. But the officer's voice cut through the chanting like a knife. You know you can't escape. They're all around you, always watching. You're one of us now. There was a chilling finality to his words, as if he were revealing a twisted truth that had lurked beneath the surface, waiting for her to be part of it. The air thickened, a miasma of dread and despair. With urgency clawing at her, she tore down the road, feet pounding against the pavement, the weight of her choices pulling her back. She could feel the shadows trailing her, a pack of wolves that had finally caught the scent of their prey. Adrenaline coursed through her body, pushing her forward. She couldn't look back, she knew they were gaining on her. The darkness wrapped around her like a cloak, suffocating and cold. Trees loomed on either side, their branches clawing at her exposed skin, reminding her of the horrors this night concealed. As she sprinted forward, Claire spotted where the road turned, leading toward the faint glow of the town's edge. A flickering streetlight in the distance promised a momentary refuge. But she saw the figures closing in, moving with a fluidity that shouldn't belong to humans. Coughing up breath, she surged onward as a shadowy blur rushed past her. A shriek, sharp and dreadful, rang out from behind. The chill of dread settled into her bones as she realized that the officer was among them now, the others joined by terrifying familiarity, their eyes reflecting nothing but darkness. With nowhere else to turn and panic gripping her chest, she veered toward the woods, praying for any kind of escape. But as the trees closed around her, she understood. There was a choice she had made that she might never undo. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced through her arm. She staggered, looking down to see a thorny vine wrap tight, pulling her deeper into the shadows. You can't run from your own, hissed a voice in the darkness. What lay ahead for Claire? Would she be consumed by the very fabric of the community she thought she knew? Or could she find a way to break that twisted bond before it closed around her completely? The vine's grip tightened with a slow, deliberate pressure, a winding serpent that pulled Claire deeper into the grasp of the trees. The shadows loomed larger, twisting to form grotesque shapes that seemed to laugh at her terror. She stumbled, retreating from the advance of those haunting faces, grappling with the vine as her heart thundered like a war drum. Help! She screamed, frantic urgency spilling out into the night, but her voice felt swallowed, devoured by the darkness that echoed with sinister pleasure. No answer came, only the rustling of the leaves, a mocking whisper against her plight. With desperation fueling her, Claire ripped at the thorny grip, feeling blood trickle where the thorns had pierced her skin. Get off me! She jerked and kicked, pain blossoming in her arm, but the vine glistened in the moonlight, unfurling like some grotesque flower eager to embrace her. The chanting grew louder, now a cacophony of voices rising with fierce intensity. Join us, the officer's face flashed in her mind, the nonchalance still etched in his smirk. You're one of us now. She couldn't breathe, the realization suffocated her more than the vines. Was there truth hidden in his words, in the warm smiles that held a dark undercurrent? Every fiber of her being screamed at her to escape, to break free, but the woods seemed alive, stretching branches out to ensnare her. She wrenched her body away, adrenaline surging anew, and ran blind into the darkness, her legs propelled by sheer instinct any direction away from them. But the forest floor was treacherous, roots twisting like fingers reaching for her ankles. Claire's feet caught, stumbling forward, falling hard onto the damp earth. The shadows loomed above her, their faces now twisted masks of mockery, taunting her while their voices grew in volume and urgency. "Join us, it's your time forever." Hours panic surged as she scrambled to her feet and bolted forward, hunched as if the branches herself might become part of the stalking figures surrounding her. But the tang of sweet rot hung heavy in the air, making her stomach churn. It was the smell of decay, of something long dead that lay in wait beneath her hurried steps. Her lungs burned, and despair began to ink its shadows in the corners of her mind. She heard whispers shift around her, felt undesired hands reach toward her. She turned abruptly, startled by a flicker of movement in the periphery where shadows danced in the dim light. A figure stood where a tree was thin enough to be a person. His eyes glinted, not with hunger like the others, but with something else. Recognition? Claire, the familiar voice seemed to pierce through the fog of terror. But it was hollow, devoid of warmth, like a ghost trying to claim its final breath. "Who are you?" she gasped, her heart threatening to escape her chest. "Don't you see? You're home." Suddenly his face morphed, contorting back into the shadows of the officer, a cavern of inky void where a human heart should beat. "No!" she screamed, spinning away, but the specters had grown closer, their chanting morphed into an urge, an invitation promising acceptance, shelter in numbers if only she would yield to their dark desires. The vine twisted around her ankle now, cold and relentless as it inched up her leg, sending icy shivers coursing through her veins. What had started as a delusion of escape now transformed into an encroaching certainty. Either she surrendered to this madness, or succumbed to the lurking terror engulfing her. Terror gripped her as the world around began to dissolve into a swirling mist, like the last breath of a fading dream. Each chanting voice echoed, relentless. Join us, join us. Was there a choice at all? At the last shred of hope, something caught her eye, a glimmer of light, weak and flickering, deeper within the claustrophobic embrace of the woods. Could it be reality, or another deception? With a raw scream, she lunged for the light, praying it would lead her somewhere, anywhere away from the clutches of despair. But as she dashed towards it, the world around her twisted, and she heard the danger creeping through the trees, ready to pull her back into the black abyss. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find salvation, or had she already crossed an unforgiving line? The light flickered like a dying star, an oasis of hope in an ocean of dread. Claire cast one last glance back at the shadows creeping toward her, their shapeless forms twisting in the black void, mouths stretched wide in a synchronized scream of ecstasy. With every ounce of strength left, she bolted toward the glimmer, fingers outstretched, heart racing. As she neared, the atmosphere shifted. The air chilled, wrapping around her like a wet blanket. Her breath hung in the air, a fog of desperation that mingled with the rancid scent of decay. The light pulsed, growing brighter, a beacon against the encroaching gloom. But it wasn't a simple patch of luminescence. Claire stumbled into a grove, an unnatural clearing where the trees bowed as if paying homage to an invisible entity. The source of the light emerged from the heart of a massive gnarled tree, its bark shimmering like silver in the moonlight, and at its base a glowing orb floated delicately, casting an eerie, inviting light. Claire felt drawn to it, as if it were breathing, pulsing with life. Yet she held back, the distant chorus of voices still whispering at the back of her mind, urging her to join them. "Please!" she hissed, her voice strained. "I just want to get out of here." The orb seemed to respond, swirling brighter, its energy thrumming. She took a tentative step forward, every instinct screaming at her to turn back, to flee from that grotesque song echoing through the trees. But her curiosity gnawed at her, a fierce necessity to understand. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward, almost ghostly. The officer stood there, but the shadows had morphed him, twisting his features into a disturbing parody of a smile. "You found it," he said, his voice smooth yet laced with menace. "The heart of the forest. Now you can truly belong." "Belong?" Claire spat, anger fueling her fear. "You think I want this? I just want to escape." "Escape?" He chuckled darkly, the sound reverberating through the leaves. The branches swayed as if responding to cruel laughter. "There is no escape, Claire. This place, it feeds on fear, on anguish. You've already become part of it." A cold sweat trickled down her back, and she felt a surge of despair. How could she have been so naive? She fought against that crushing weight pressing down on her heart, the feeling of every soul that had ever disappeared here clawing at her consciousness. "Listen closely," he said, stepping closer, his simmering gaze glinting. "Embrace what you are. The forest will welcome you. You have the chance to join the others. No pain, only truth. Don't you want that?" The chanting intensified, rising and surging, as though hungry for her answer. In that moment, the glowing orb dimmed slightly, as if sensing her hesitation. She felt the vines creeping again, tightening like a vice against her skin, and an image flashed through her mind, people like her twisted and writhing, laughing alongside the shadows. "No! I want tea!" she screamed, the words tearing from her throat, defiance igniting in her very core. Just then, a stone cracked beneath her foot, shifting the ground. The orb flickered, surged again, and Claire felt it call to her, beckoning with a promise she didn't fully understand. Could she harness its power? Before she could take another step, the shadows lunged. A pair of hands reached from the depths of the darkness, cold, cloying, unmistakably human, each hand a desperate plea for her to join the night. She was trapped in their grasp, caught between the light and the dark, as the forest moaned, longing for her decision. Could she truly break free, or would she have to choose the life waiting in the shadows? In that moment of heart-stopping terror, as she struggled against the grasping vines, everything went quiet. The chorus fell silent, and all she could hear was her heart pounding, echoing in the vast, empty spaces around her. And then she felt a whisper, soft and inviting, slithering into her ears. "What would you risk to be free?" The question hung heavy in the air, an invitation trembling on the edge of a knife. Would she dare to find out? Claire's heart thundered as the forest enveloped her in its suffocating embrace. She struggled to breathe, panic clawing at her throat. What would you risk to be free? The question hung in her mind, spiraling like the darkness around her. The whisper became a chorus, beckoning her closer. Each word wrapped around her, tightening like the vines that pinned her down. She dug her nails into the earth, trying to yank herself away from the grasping shadows. But they were relentless. She could feel their cold fingers sliding over her skin, pulling her down, down into the abyss. "Let go," the officer's voice taunted, slithering through the air like smoke. "Embrace the gift of freedom. Let it wash over you. Feel the weight lift away." "No!" Claire gasped, shaking her head fiercely. A desperate need for escape surged within her. She thought of the warm sunlight, the laughter of friends, the safety of her old life. Was it worth all of this? The orb's glow pulsed again, casting eerie shadows that danced wildly against the trees. How had she not noticed before? It wasn't just an orb, it was alive, breathing, aware. It grew brighter, illuminating the dark corners of the grove. In the pale light, she saw faces twisted, screen-stretched visages caught in a grim parody of ecstasy, their eyes rolled back, filled with madness. Claire shuddered. Were those her fate? Was succumbing to the shadows the only way to survive? A burst of adrenaline surged through her veins. With a fierce cry, she thrust herself forward, breaking through the shadowy grasp. The vines snapped, recoiling as if stung, and she lurched towards the orb. Perhaps this was her chance. A flicker of hope whispered in her ears. The moment she touched the orb, a surge of power flooded her, electric and intoxicating. Memories flashed her childhood, her first love, moments that defined her. But they twisted, darkening, blending with the haunting shadows of the forest. Tendrils of darkness curled around her thoughts, murmuring promises of acceptance and power. But deep down, something roared in defiance. This wasn't freedom, this was a snare. She pulled her hand back, severing the connection. The forest howled, and the laughter of the lost souls morphed into a cacophony of rage. The shadows surged forward, furious at her rejection. Claire stumbled backward, catching her breath, her eyes wide with terror. "Stay!" the officer shouted, his form shifting grotesquely in the light, his smile wider now, predatory. "Join us. You'll never have to be alone again. You'll never feel pain." "Never?" she countered, her voice still trembling. "What about the pain of being trapped in this nightmare?" He took a step forward, and the forest trembled. "You think you understand pain? You've barely begun to feel it." Cold sweat dripped down her spine. Wasn't he lying? Claire felt the weight of despair pushing down on her, an ancient sorrow echoing through the world around her. Did she even know what she was truly afraid of? The idea of loss, or the horrors lurking beyond the veil of familiar? "Mornings will always return," he cooed, as if sharing a deep secret. "But nights, they can last forever." The shadows leaped, reforming into grotesque figures, each one reaching for her, whispering promises of eternal companionship. But something flickered in Claire's mind, a spark of hope igniting a memory she thought lost, her determination. "No!" she screamed. She turned, sprinting away from the orb and the twisted figures. The ground shifted beneath her, roots and branches striking out, trying to pull her back into the darkness, but she was frantic, desperate to break free of this nightmare. As she ran, the forest seemed to shift, walls of darkness closing in from all sides. Suddenly, she spotted a path, a thin strip of light cutting through the chaos. She sprinted toward it, heart racing, fully aware that lurking shadows followed close behind, their sinister whispers still echoing in her ears, trying to draw her back. Would this path lead her to freedom? Or was it another trap? With the night closing in, Claire pushed herself harder, able only to think of the warmth of the outside world and the promise of dawn. As she neared the glimmering light, she felt the shadows surge behind her, relentless. Would she find safety, or would the darkness claim her once and for all? Breathless, closing in on the light, she feared it might be her last chance to escape. What lay beyond the threshold? Would it be salvation, or a deeper nightmare waiting to consume her? Claire burst into the glow, the harsh light of freedom enveloping her as she crossed the threshold. She gasped, eyes wide, as she found herself standing in a clearing. But this wasn't a sanctuary. The air hung heavy, thick with silence and an unsettling stillness. Around her, trees stood like sentinels, their twisted trunks looming ominously. The clearing pulsed with a strange energy, a warning that ominously buzzed at her temples. For a fleeting moment she thought she'd escaped the shadows, but that thought faded when she heard it. The whispering began anew, rising from the depths of the forest, echoing like an ominous chant. "Join us, stay." Claire's breath quickened. The whispers wrapped around her, like invisible chains, almost pulling her back toward the dark. The feeling of panic clawed at her, reminding her of the officer and his twisted promises. A trickle of doubt seeped into her heart. What if she hadn't escaped at all? What if this was merely a new stage in their game? She turned in a circle, desperately scanning her surroundings. The path she'd come from had vanished, swallowed by the shadows, leaving her marooned in this half-lit world cut off from her own. The whispers grew louder now, a dissonant symphony weaving through the treetops. Each note seemed to stab at the back of her mind, reminding her of what she tried to forget. Claire, it was her name, uttered lovingly, hauntingly. For an instant, she thought she recognized the voice, her mother's soft, comforting tone. "Come back to us." "No!" she shouted, but her words felt feeble against the tide of shadow. A shiver ran down her spine as memories began to wash over her, emotions flaring with each soft syllable. Her mother had suffered, had hurt long before she'd left this world. The yearning to reunite pulled at her heart, straining against her resolve like a taut string about to snap. Suddenly, flames erupted from the forest, licking at the base of the trees. The light twisted and contorted, bathing the clearing in a hellish glow. Claire screamed and stumbled backward, heart racing. Panic blinded her with the intensity of the fire, forcing her to consider if the flames were a risk or a potential escape. Embrace the fire, the officer's voice slithered through the chaos. This is the true path to freedom. Let it cleanse you. With every passing second, the allure of the fire grew stronger, beckoning her. She felt its warmth envelop her, a seductive caress that pressed against her skin. Claire could sense the touch of the shadows behind her, could feel them inching closer. Their chill intensified her fear. The forest was alive, breathing, watching. She looked back at the ravenous flames, feeling time slip through her fingers like sand. Do I burn, or do I vanish into the darkness? The weight of choice bore down on her, crushing her spirit. Her mind raced, torn between the past and future, the warmth of the flames and the coldness of the shadows. Each second that passed twisted and coiled tighter around her like a serpent ready to strike. She clenched her fists, fighting for clarity amidst the whirlwind of panic. Her determination surged once more, clawing its way back into focus. If both paths promised destruction, she would choose her own. Just as she had resolved to leap toward the fire and make her choice, a figure emerged from the shadows, shrouded in darkness but with eyes that glittered like stars. The figure stood still, a juxtaposition against the chaotic backdrop of light and dark. Not every light leads to warmth, Claire, and not all shadows are enemies. As the figure moved closer, the whispers quieted, and an eerie stillness settled over the clearing. Claire's heart raced anew, precisely what this entity might want, and whether she was prepared to listen. What decision would she make? Would she step into the warmth, or trust the shadows to reveal a truth she'd yet to uncover? Time was running out. The figure's voice hung in the air, lingering like smoke from the fire. Claire couldn't move. Was this figure friend or foe? The depth of its gaze sent chills down her spine. It gestured towards the flames, and for a heartbeat she felt an urge to step closer, to surrender to the blaze and find solace in its ferocious embrace. "Who are you?" she managed to croak out, struggling to maintain her composure. "Merely a guide," it replied, the voice smooth, almost melodic. "The choice is yours, Claire. Light or shadow, one births freedom while the other harbors truths." The fire behind her crackled menacingly, sending sparks into the air, like wailing souls desperate to escape. Claire felt trapped, torn between the grasp of her past and the unknown that lay ahead. She laughed bitterly, a hollow sound. Is it really that simple? Freedom at the cost of pain, or truth masked by darkness? Every choice carries its weight, the figure said. Its expression was inscrutable, a mask in the haze of chaos, yet each flicker of its own fiery gaze seemed to promise her clarity. What lies at the center of your heart? Do you seek to forget or to remember? The shadows, once menacing, seemed to pull back, slithering away like hesitant serpents. But the fire roared, and its heat clung to her like a second skin, tempting her with potential salvation. She saw images forming in the flickering light, moments from her childhood, laughter stolen by time. Then the whispers returned, drowning out her memories, twisting her thoughts. "Join us, stay enough," Claire shouted. "Leave me in peace." The shadows ebbed further, almost startled by her vehemence, but the fire reached for her, tendrils licking her senses alive. "Do you see?" the figure asked, stepping forward. "Every challenge leads only to a deeper understanding. You must confront the darkness within to unleash the light outside." Claire's heart raced. "You speak in riddles. Do you want me to jump into the flames or face the shadows?" "Only you can decide which one reveals the truth you need," the figure said, the voice echoing as if carried by the wind. Sweat trickled down Claire's back. A choice bound by terror. She felt the rapid pulse of the forest closing in as a deep rumble of thunder resonated from the shadows. Every moment of hesitation only solidified the weight of her fear. Did she want to hear the truth her mother whispered? Or would she rather lose herself in the fever of the flames, singed but free from the shackles of her past? Claire looked at the glowing fire. It promised release. She shifted her gaze towards the darkness instead, where the figure stood, obscured yet unwavering. The shadows swirled expectantly, whispering not of despair now, but of acceptance. An invitation to face fears yet unspoken. "Will you turn your back on what you've known?" the figure urged, eyes glistening like fractals in the night. Breathing heavily, Claire felt the ground shift beneath her. What if I choose neither? What if I refuse to conform to your expectations? The corners of the figure's lips curved into a knowing smile. Then the forest shall decide for you. With that, the once distant howling returned, growing louder, like many voices merging into one original sound, a cacophony of urges colliding. Claire's pulse quickened. The choice was slipping away from her grasp. She needed to act now. But what if it was all an illusion? What if the shadows lied? She had to break free from their grip. Claire took a step back, but the flames roared in protest. Panic flooded her mind. She couldn't stay dilly-dallying forever. Choose. The figure called, its voice sharp as she watched the shadows creep forward, hungry for her decision. Time slipped away like a candle burning at both ends. Claire inhaled sharply. Then I choose to fight. But how would she fight what she could not entirely see? And just as she steeled herself, the ground trembled ominously, sending tremors through the clearing. Before she could react, the fire and shadows swelled toward her, two opposing forces melding into an explosion of light and dark. Caught in the heart of the tempest, Claire braced herself for the revelation that awaited on the other side, but what would it bring? The explosion of light and dark enveloped Claire, wrapping around her like a tempest of chaos. A scream clawed at her throat, but it turned into silence the moment the whirlpool sucked her in. The ground disappeared beneath her feet, replaced by a vast expanse of darkness. She felt weightless, as if gravity itself had relinquished its hold. Then, with a jarring thud, Claire landed hard on cold earth, gasping for air. The shadows had swallowed her whole, yet the fire's flicker remained in her periphery, its heat a lingering memory on her skin. She pushed herself upright, heart pounding like a war drum. Dread clung to her like the damp fog settling in around her. Welcome to the realm of choices, a new voice echoed, hollow and echoing. Claire spun around, eyes wide. A figure emerged from the shadows, its features flickering in and out, like a faulty hologram. No head, no true form, just a silhouette formed of darkness, with eyes that glinted like stars in an unholy night. Where am I? She choked out, desperate as panic clawed at her throat. You are between, it said, voice slithering into her mind. Between choices made and those yet to come. This is the domain of decisions, where lost souls wander. Lost? The word tasted bitter. I'm not lost. I know what I need to do. Do you? It whispered, drawing closer. Specters of your past will try to sway you. They know your heart and your fears. They will lie and dig until you crack. She swallowed, the warmth of resolve fading. Was it true? Were the shadows here to taunt her with her failures? Images flooded her mind, regrets, mistakes, moments where she could be chosen differently. Each one felt sharper than the last, like shards of glass embedded in her skin. But once you face them, the power to choose becomes yours. You must embrace the truth of your heart. The figure beckoned, arms wide, as if welcoming her into a chasm of darkness. Claire hesitated, the weight of indecision pressing down like an anchor. What truth? What if I'm too broken to fight? Suddenly, a scream pierced the thick air, raw and haunting. Her throat tightened as she recognized it, the sound of her own voice. The shadows froze, a moment of tense silence stretching before the figure laughed, a chilling sound. Welcome to the echoes of your fears, it taunted. The truth is already in you, Claire. Do you dare confront it? Heart racing, she stepped forward, fists clenched. I face my truths. I will not hide. With those defiant words, the shadows congealed, swarming toward her with a voracious intensity. Claire gasped, bracing herself against the approaching tide. Memories twisted within them, moments of joy tainted by loss, laughter turned to tears, and everything she desperately wished to bury. The specters swirled, their voices merging into a cacophony. You abandoned us! You left us behind! They wailed, tearing at her heart. Claire staggered, her breath catching, feeling the crushing weight of her past surging forward. No! She screamed, limbs trembling. You won't control me anymore. The figure loomed, still as a shadow. Then face us, face all you have avoided. Claire's blood ran icy, yet a flicker of resolve ignited deep within. She reached for the wellspring of strength buried beneath layers of despair. I can fight! I will fight! Just then, as she summoned her inner power, the shadows crashed together, forming a face twisted, anguished, but achingly familiar. It was her mother, eyes heavy with unspoken sorrow. Claire, why haven't you listened? The apparition whispered, voice cracking. Shock ripped through Claire like lightning. The past collided with the present, melding into an unbearable burden. But could she truly confront this phantom? An unbearable silence settled over the clearing, thick with anticipation. Claire steeled herself, sensing the next choice looming over her like a storm. Would she confront this shadow of her mother or flee into the void of darkness once more? Choose, Claire! The shadowy figure hissed, a seductive urgency in its tone. And in that moment she realized the ultimate truth, to face the haunting echoes might be the only key to her freedom. What would her decision reveal? The forest held its breath. Shadows shifted, and Claire stood at the precipice of revelation. Would she descend into this nightmare, or would she rise above? Claire took a trembling step forward, the air thickening around her with dread. The face of her mother loomed closer, anguish etched in every line. Each heartbeat struck like thunder in her ears, a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. I must face this, she whispered to herself, gripping her fists until her nails bit into her palms. Good, the shadowy figure hissed, its eyes reflecting an inky void. Only through facing the truth can you escape this cursed realm. Why did you leave me? The specter of her mother's face twisted in sorrow, the question echoing like a death knell through the gloom. I thought it was for your safety, Claire stammered, the weight of her choices crashing down on her. I believed it would hurt less. The shadow smiled, but it wasn't a smile of comfort, it was a chilling grin, all teeth and malice. And yet here you are. A shattered soul lost among regrets. Choose me or lose yourself, Claire. What do you want from me? She cried out, fear ripping through her bravado. The shadows danced, swirling with malicious delight. Claire felt their presence press against her chest like a vice. A simple choice, the figure intoned. Accept your past and reclaim your future, or deny it, and let it consume you forever. Fury ignited within her. I won't stand by while you twist my fears. I refuse to live in the shadows of what I couldn't do. The specters howled, their cries morphing into an unsettling chorus. You were weak. You were afraid. They jeered, their voices serrated with indignation. Face it, Claire. You turned your back. No! Claire shouted, heart racing with an adrenaline surge. With every ounce of determination she could muster, she shouted, I will not be what you say. I will break this cycle. The ground under her feet trembled, shadows swirling violently, fighting her declaration. Clarity swept through her mind, crystallizing her resolve. I refuse to be chained by history. I own my story. With a deep breath, Claire stepped straight into the dark face of the apparition. The memories cascaded, briefly overwhelming, but she remembered the warmth of love, laughter shared, moments of courage, her own truths shining through the darkness. Embrace your truth. The figure shrieked, bitterness in its tone. You cannot escape. Claire tightened her resolve, the crushing fear shifting to something else, power. The specters screamed, their cries filling her with anger, sadness, but also resilience. She wouldn't let them win. As the shadowed memories surged, faces flickered in her mind, her mother, her friends, even her own smiling face filled with hope. You're not real. You're only a fragment of my fears. She yelled, the words burning hot on her tongue. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled as if struck. No! We are your truth. You will see. They howled, but Claire pushed through, feeling the joy rise within her, matching the pain. She could be strong, could step above these ghosts. The apparition of her mother's face began to crack, splintering like shattered glass. You must remember, and then, in an instant, everything changed. Claire stood alone in the pitch-black void, the familiar weight of despair lifted only to be met with a chilling silence. The shadows retreated, coiling and collapsing into a teeming mass, leaving a dark stain where her mother once had been. Panic surged as Claire's surroundings shifted again. A chilling laugh echoed behind her, the figure still lurking. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning." Heart pounding, Claire felt the ground tremble again, the sketchy outlines of alternate paths unfurling before her. A choice loomed, darker than the last. Her heart quaked, caught between the freedom she sought and the unknown terror waiting to ensnare her again. As the shadows writhed, a new apparition emerged, beckoning with a twisted finger, its face shrouded in the deepest black, only starvation and malice visible. "Come closer," Claret whispered, voice smooth and enticing. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the weight of the decision pressing heavily upon her. "Will you take a step toward the darkness again?" Claire's breath hitched, straining against a mix of dread and determination. What lies ahead? The chilling mysteries of her new path awaited, shrouded in the darkness, beckoning toward the unknown. Claire stumbled back, heart racing as the shadows danced around her, menacing and alive. The weight of all her fears hung heavy in the air, winding around her like a living cage. For a moment she felt utterly powerless, dwarfed by the enormity of what awaited. Yet deep down, a flicker of resolve ignited. No more running. No more hiding. The apparition with the twisted face lurked closer, its voice like honey smeared with poison. "You have tasted fear before, now let us explore it fully. Join us in the dark embrace. A place where pain and power are intertwined. You can wield it. You can be free." "No!" Claire shouted, the word echoing defiantly through the clearing. "You think you can twist my will? I've faced the shadows of my past and emerged stronger. I will not allow you to ensnare me again, not this time." With that declaration, she focused on the memories pouring back to her. Laughter with friends, the comforting warmth of her husband's embrace, her daughter's bright smile that lit up even the darkest days. Those were her strengths, not the fears that sought to consume her. The darkness around her writhed with rage, voices combining into a chaotic symphony. "You are nothing without us," they screamed. "You belong in the shadows, where pain becomes purpose. Embrace it." Claire could feel them trying to reach into her mind, toying with the strings of her emotions. But a flame of defiance surged through her, hotter than before. "I am more than my past," she cried. "I am my choices. I wouldn't give you that power." With a newfound clarity, she closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and let her warm, loving memories wash over her mind. Each recollection built on the last, forming an invisible barrier against the encroaching darkness. Light flickered in her heart, translating into an overwhelming urge to fight back. "Go back to your darkness," she yelled, raising her arms as if summoning the light. "I choose love. I choose life. I choose to let go." The shadows recoiled as if stung, seething and howling in protest, but Claire pressed on. She felt the warmth of hope radiating from her core, expanding outward like an explosion of brilliance. White light burst forth from her being, illuminating the clearing and shredding the shadows into fragments of smoke. "No!" the apparition shrieked, its form dissipating as the fire she summoned spiraled around her, an aura of strength pulsing violently. The whispers turned to wails, drowning in a deluge of light. In the center of that radiance, Claire found clarity. A choice stood before her, one laden with weight. Behind her, paths swirled in darkness, enticing in their deception, stretching into the void of despair. Ahead, the light beckoned, vibrant and alive. With every ounce of determination blazing in her chest, she took a step toward the light. She felt the shadows clawing at her heels, shrieking their warnings, but it didn't matter. She had chosen. The darkness exploded behind her, a cacophony of fury and defeat as she crossed the threshold into the brilliance. And then, everything went still. Claire gasped as she emerged, no longer trapped, no longer burdened. She stood outside the forest, bathed in dawn's golden light. The scent of fresh grass tickled her nose, birds chirping as if welcoming her home. Tears streamed down her face, a release of everything she de-battled. She was free. The burden of the night was behind her, the chains of her fears shattered as she stepped into a new day. As she turned back, the forest loomed an ancient sentinel watching over the path she had conquered. She knew she could never forget the darkness that dwelled within, but now she understood it didn't define her. It was simply a part of her journey, a shadow that could never consume the light she carried. Claire took a deep breath, feeling the warmth surrounding her. She focused on love, on her family waiting for her, a bright future ahead. And with that resolve, she whispered goodbye. As she turned to leave, the forest sighed, a soft rustling echoing through the trees like a farewell, leaving behind the remnants of what once could have trapped her. She was ready to live and to never forget the truth of her choices. Now, if you've enjoyed this spine-tingling conclusion that wrapped up Claire's chilling story, here's what you need to do. You must subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on the next exclusive tales that will steal your breath away. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm. Yes, your click matters. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the wild twists we just saw. I want to hear from you. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this ending. Thank you later. Let us keep this community growing strong.